This is a show about the path less taken, a show about a rocky path, a path of patience and persistence in equal measure. What you ultimately find down this path is passion, a passion for live electronic music. Welcome to Hardware Road. And it's time we welcome Puscha.
Hello.
How you doing?
Yeah, good. Yeah, thanks for having me on, Adrian.
My pleasure.
It's pronounced Puscha.
Puscha.
Yeah.
Thanks for correcting me.
No one gets it right. It's fine. I don't even know if I should bother correcting people half the time, but I thought, I don't know, since this is being recorded, you could put it on the record.
Yeah, Puscha.
Puscha.
Puscha. So does that, while we're talking about the name, does it have any meaning? Does it come from a different language or anything like that?
Yeah.
Sounds like it. Sounds like...
I came across it years ago now, like well over a decade ago. It was on this article that I was reading that had foreign words that didn't have an English equivalent. And this was meant to be an obscure, I think, Ukrainian word that means like a deep primordial forest that hadn't been seen by humans before.
Oh, what?
And yeah, I thought that was a really cool word. So I wrote it down somewhere and started making weird music under it for a long time ago. And then started making different music, but eventually came back to it because I thought it was better than the other.
Yeah. We'll get back to all that.
Yeah.
My first question actually was about your little one, Sandor, and how I want to know how life is with Sandor and how that's affected your jamming life at home and your creative outlet at home. How's that all going as well? So first, how's the little one? And second, how's it affected you?
Yeah, big life change. My son is now nearly 2 years old. Definitely have a lot less time to be able to, commit to making music. I think one of the biggest things was that when I used to make music, I would really spend like a lot of time like sitting there listening quite deeply to the things that I was making and making small movements and really kind of absorbing myself in the processes. But now that I don't really have the time for doing that, I can't get as quite deep and close listening, but I still try to have a new kind of version of that. I think I'm still trying to figure out the best way to do that.
Do you think it's an animal instinct? That's that thing where you're listening out for your child in distress?
No, I don't think it's that. I think it's more so something to do with my process and listening to the detail in that. I think that, at this stage, maybe early on that was a thing, but at this stage I know his patterns very well. And the sound of his voice is totally embedded in my psyche, so it'll cut through the mix. Their frequencies are designed to cut through anything, aren't they? And they've had research that shows that your psychology changes and really does tune into the sound of your own child's voice. It's pretty interesting.
It doesn't surprise me, all these years of evolution.
So now I think that, my time for making music, I think I've been really lucky this year. I've had, quite a few gigs, and one of which has been, I've been playing almost every month at Bar Open. They've had this late night, live electronic music thing in their front bar. And because it's in the front bar and it's so casual, it's not ticketed, not really seated or anything like that. Kind of been using that as like a way of being able to do my practice and trial out new ideas and try and do different things that I don't really have time for at home, but also the time that I do have kind of working towards having setting up some kind of outlet so that I can do all that.
It's really good that they're putting live music on as not as a background almost, isn't it? Right? Really? And instead of just having something, Spotify or whatever list playing in the background, they're actually putting the time in to employ people to
totally.
Music. That's great.
I think it's a good idea as well. Like it's 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. So their idea is that it's after people have seen bands in the area, but before people go to clubs. So it's kind of in between vibe.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to go to any others. I'm normally in bed by the time it starts.
Yeah.
And that's actually been a bit of a challenge being a parent and going out and do this late night 2-hour gig slot. But yeah, they've kept it going. It's gone beyond the trial period, so it must be going pretty well for them if they're still doing it.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to know that there's more things happening in the live electronic music scene. There's some new things happening, started up this year too, which is really good. Let's go back, and speaking of children, you mentioned your parents were very musical. Your mother played mandolin, was it? Yep. And your father liked experimental music. So how much do you think that they influenced your musical journey to date?
I think there was definitely some stuff there that planted its seeds, especially as a teenager and prior to being able to have connection to the internet and being able to explore anything. Some of my early explorations of music was definitely listening to what records I could find in my parents' collection, finding what was interesting there. Particularly remember getting into the prog rock that they both had. That Mum had some Pink Floyd and some Jethro Tull that I got right into, and Dad had some King Crimson and Genesis and Yes stuff, and some Kraftwerk in there as well. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Some great influences there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Otherwise, as a teenager, I was listening to, a lot of heavy metal, like a lot of teenagers do. But
Is that a progression, like, in a rebellious stage? Well, I did that.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think I was just kind of drawn to it from a young age. Like when I was in primary school, I was listening to Korn, for example. They were big at the time. Yeah. And so that probably, I think just like that was what was popular then, was this kind of nu metal wave, which we all cringe at now. But that was
only because it was repeated ad nauseum. I remember distinctly, let me go back for you, like when I won't mention what I was doing at the time, but I was sitting around with my mates and a friend invited me over. He said, come over, sit down, I want to play something to you. And he said, don't say anything, just listen to this whole album from start to finish. And it was the original Korn album. And at the time, we heard nothing like it. There was nothing, it had obviously influences, but it hadn't been arranged and put together in that way, and so emotionally as well. Yeah. Right. So that first album of theirs was really groundbreaking. It just didn't, unfortunately, it didn't go anywhere from there, right? It just got repeated through a lot of...
Well, I think also, like a lot of things, the record labels found they could cash in. There was a nice niche that teenagers would lap up, and they lent into that, and they allowed people like Fred Durst to be a part of that. And, I'm sure we all can remember how bad Limp Bizkit were.
I was never a fan. That just, that's just me personally. Nothing against Limp Bizkit fan. Like,
I think there's a lot of ironic listeners these days.
Sorry?
I think there's a lot of ironic listeners for bands like Limp Bizkit these days.
Yeah, okay, yeah. It's probably a nostalgic thing more than anything else. Or...
I had a friend that went to a party a few years ago, and there was Limp Bizkit cover band playing.
Oh, really?
They'd learnt all the songs. I can't imagine how that came about, but these people are dedicated enough to learn the songs and practice them and then play them in front of people at a party. That blows my mind.
Yeah. I wonder why. Nostalgia, you think? Just
people have a good sense of humor, I guess.
So what else is in the metal range? So as you said, you had a lot of influences from your parents, and then you moved into, because you did also say you were living in the country at the time, right?
Yeah.
Country, so you didn't have a a lot of access. Well, you didn't have access to fast internet, did you say?
Yeah, we had dial-up.
Dial-up.
So if you were really patient, you could download something over a week on dial-up.
Yeah, right.
But my brother would hog the computer, so I could get dribs and drabs, or if I went to a LAN party with my mates, I could try and leech some music, but it was mostly awful stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think I was always drawn to more unusual music, weirder kind of stuff.
So where did you find that in the country? So when you were out in the country, how did you... So it was a lot harder, to find new music. And I know I found a lot of new music through my friends, even, in the burbs of Melbourne. But that was a long time ago before the internet, by the way. So you was either record store or people that you knew. So so I assume that's something similar, because that's what we had back then.
Well, I think I kind of became a person amongst my friends to show them the weird and wonderful.
Oh, right. Okay. You were that guy.
Yeah. So I did used to come to Melbourne for a day. I'd catch the bus and the train and spend all of my hard-earned money at a teenager's minimum wage. Yeah. At JB Hi-Fi, and the sold record store Missing Link that used to. Yeah. It was more of a punk record shop, but it had some experimental stuff there.
Yeah, well. I remember it. Yeah.
And I just used to try and find stuff. I reading articles and things on the internet, had some resources that kind of worked for me.
Never bought magazines or anything like that? That was
I got some magazines. Yeah. But anything that's in a published magazine you can buy in the country is only going to be it's not going to be digging that deep into more experimental music.
It's more top 40.
Yeah. Even some of the more alternative ones were still kind of I don't know, Triple J adjacent kind of stuff.
Yeah. Fair enough there.
But I think I did get to find some interesting stuff around then anyway. It was kind of a stab in the dark to buy these records and wait till I get home to listen to them.
Oh, right. They didn't let you have a listen in the store? Sometimes they would let you do that back in the day.
At Missing Link, but at JB Hi-Fi, if it was shrink wrapped, the special imports that they had.
Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah. So
unless you knew what it was or heard it before.
Yeah, and every now and then you get a dud as well. You'd buy this CD, you'd spend your $20, $30 on it, you get home and you put it on and it's awful. So that enough times. I think I was lucky at that time that prog rock was making a bit of a comeback at the time. That's the Mars Volta and Muse, and that I was right into in high school. So I could find stuff that was kind of related to them that kind of opened up my world a bit, and coming across bands like Mr. Bungle as well. And it kind of set me on this pathway of more out there music.
So when you moved from the country into the city, so was there a transition in because you were playing music at home, you were playing the guitar, self-taught, and so you're making music back then. How did the move to the city affect or did it? Should I ask, did it affect your creative process and change things for you at all?
Yeah, it really did. Well, having access to broadband internet, for one, was a big thing for me, because I could pirate all this music that I could only dream of otherwise.
You didn't really say that.
Well, you can't. It's harder to pirate these days. Back then, it was a thing, though. If you wanted something that was unusual, often the only way to find it was through pirating.
Yes.
And so I think pirating was actually, a really good thing at the time for being able to spread music, because I think it opened up this vast back catalogue, as well as current music, of things that were otherwise unheard of.
Yeah.
And people could talk about them and share them online. It was a really fantastic age to be exploring new music.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we had things like MySpace, where it was the first time we ever had people being able to connect on a really public forum like that, where music was a big part of it as well. So being able to chat to other musicians and listen to each other's work, because people did actually listen to other people's work back then. Now you post something online and it's just hard work to get anyone to listen to it.
It is, yeah.
So having broadband internet was a big thing for me. But also along with that was I think moving into a share house with some friends that I had a band with in high school. So even though we were all really lazy and probably didn't jam as much as we thought we would, we still did spend some time together making music and sharing music together. And I think it was like a really nice experience from living in the country to open up those kinds of things.
So even though you're in the share house with the old friends, I assume you guys were meeting new people, and so other influences coming in from.
Yeah, a little bit. I think it took me quite a while to figure out like how to navigate a city life.
Okay,
and maybe in some way because I was living with my friends. I didn't have anything that was really driving me to push beyond that to meet people. I definitely met new people going to uni and things like that, but I wasn't studying music. And so I found it hard to meet people where I, shared similar interests, maybe a few people here and there.
Yeah.
But I don't think that I really found a community where I felt like I belonged musically, up until I got into electronic music many years later. So more recently, really. I think because before then, the music that I was making, didn't really quite fit in with, it was kind of more outside of music. And so there wasn't really a scene that, could really fit in with that.
Yeah, so let me get to my next question then, because as I mentioned earlier, you play guitar, self-taught, and then you had a few lessons after that, and then you were playing in bands, obviously. As you mentioned, you were living with the guys when you moved into the city. So my question is, so moving from playing an instrument to live hardware, I've actually found it's quite common so far. So I think Vesa and Felix both had that same experience, and I think Shay did as well. So how does playing solo compare, and how has it changed your mindset to composition?
I think playing solo, the great thing about it is you don't have to worry about getting everyone together to rehearse and practice. It just cuts out a huge logistical thing that is necessary if you want to play in a band with other people. You can use your own time in whatever way you want to rehearse and go over things and compose new stuff.
So has that completely rewired the way that you approached composition? And maybe because you would practice at home by yourself, right? If you're playing guitar, a lot of the time you're playing solo, you're practicing. So does that completely rewire the way you think about what you're doing and how you practice and your composition?
Well, I think if anything, playing my modular synthesizer kind of harks back to the days when I was playing guitar through a loop pedal, through delays and effects and things like that.
Okay.
That I was really into that for quite a while, in my late teens, early 20s. But I never thought it was interesting enough as it was to perform live as a solo artist. And so when I got into modular, being able to work within like loop-based things, but by being able to interact with those loops and kind of change them live, kind of felt like what I wanted to do with guitar all those years, to make it more interesting.
Yeah, right.
But I could do it with this all-in-one instrument instead of just playing guitar and sloppily playing a loop and then playing a solo over that. Just always felt so boring for me. Like I enjoyed doing it, but I never felt that it would be interesting enough for anyone. But no
Satriani.
Yeah, none of that.
Yeah,
but with also a synthesizer, you can because you don't have to worry about playing and technique and all these kind of things. You can really focus on listening. And that was something that I was always really interested in in bands that I got into in my early 20s as well, like listening to bands like the German group Can, where all of their stuff was like really repetitive and focused on listening really closely to things, what the other players were doing and interacting with that. I can kind of get a sense that I can do that within my own practices as a solo artist. I can get a number of things happening inside the synthesizer and be able to make them interact and listen very closely to that. So I think all my composition is kind of based around those kind of practices. When I record, I generally like to do like something of a performance, and then occasionally I'll do a little bit of editing after that, but a lot of the time it'll just be about capturing a good performance of my synth. So the compositional and performance parts of the practices are really kind of intertwined for me.
So you capture your moment, right? There's stereo. Do you multi-track at all? Like,
generally not. I sometimes might record the bass separately. Depending on what I'm doing, it can be useful. But generally it's just a stereo out. So I just kind of have to get
capture the moment and get the mix right.
Yeah, I've tried to do multi-tracking, but it lost a lot of the magic in the interaction
afterwards.
Yeah,
that's what I find. I'm having this discussion with a lot of people recently about some people can. But they always talk about even if they do multi-track, it's about maybe removing mistakes more than actually changing the sound or the depth of the sound, or because you lose the essence of the mix otherwise, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, especially with something like a modular, like it's all about the way those things interact that makes it really interesting.
Yeah, especially in your style as well. I found as I explore more ambient and soundscape things myself, which is I've bought my ambient soundscape case in. It really does, like more than I would, let's say, if I'm making techno. Maybe it's just the way I use my case with techno as well. It's a little bit different to the way I use hardwired synths, but we won't get into that. We'll get back to you. So you had a stint playing. You were telling me you had a stint playing under the name Robotron. Which did not go well. You told me. So, what made you persist then with hardware jamming? And eventually emerge as Puscha?
I think it was just something that I just was always interested in, wanted to do.
So even though you had that, like, because you told me earlier, like it wasn't good at the time, you sort of gave it away.
Yeah, so I was kind of using two names. So at first, when I was using the name Puscha, it was for this weird psychedelic folk music that I was making, that I was using synthesizers and unusual folk instruments, and
acoustic,
acoustic, mostly acoustic, but with some synth layers in there. And that was like really outside of music that I was making, and I enjoyed making that, but it was not something that I could ever perform with, and never got around to doing releases with. And then the other side was, as I was getting more and more interested in synthesizers, was this Robotron project that I had, which was, mostly synthesizers with a little bit of bass guitar in there as well. I was always fighting just going full electronic music. For whatever late reason.
Fair enough. And you were, you play an instrument to begin with. That's, you go with what you know until you go in a different direction, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But the Robotron stuff was mostly keyboards, and I had an MPC for a while, and I was still really learning all that stuff. And so I did put out this one EP at some point, but it was terrible. I've since removed it from anywhere anyone could find online.
So we can't find it, so don't bother going out searching for it.
Save your time. But yeah, I think that it was a good learning process.
We're going to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And and as you probably found with when you go from being a solo artist in regards to playing an instrument, and then you go into the realm of playing live electronic music, you have to go from being like having one stereo channel just for yourself and concentrating on you to concentrating on a mix. Right?
Yeah.
And that's I think that's where a lot of the learning and the experience comes from over time.
Yeah.
So would you say you've got obviously better and keep improving in regards to that, or?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think, learning your instruments along with learning the other process as well. Back in those early Robotron days, I was just recording into Audacity and multi-tracking in there, and anything that I wanted to edit was like cutting out tiny snippets of sounds, and this incredibly laborious process, which I think, it was probably not the best results, but it taught me the hard way how to edit those things. And eventually when I got around to getting a good cracked version of Fruity Loops from my brother, which I still use.
Yeah.
Old cracked version, probably.
Oh, really?
12 years old.
Oh, nice.
That's when I could really start getting in and actually working harder on making things fit and using some more processing and effects as well.
So how did we get in from Robotron? So you obviously persisted in the background. Did Puscha emerge from your foray into modular synths?
Well, I think at some point I thought, why am I using this name Robotron? This is a terrible name. So I kind of stopped using it. Yeah. And the music that I was making from that anyway, I kind of lost interest in. Like at the time, I was listening to a lot of instrumental hip hop and more experimental beat kind of stuff. And so it was kind of in that domain. But I think, as I started leaving that, was around a time when I was experimenting with psychedelics. And so, leaning more into the Puscha weird psychedelic music anyway. But, getting more and more interested in
journey.
And using electronic instruments more and more as a part of that. And at some point, I think that I kind of was losing interest in making that kind of music, and it was becoming more electronic. And I was doing some film soundtracks at the time as well.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, it was good. I still do film soundtracks.
We'll talk more about that. So I want to get into that transition actually, because it can be quite an important transition to, and sometimes rewires our brains in regards to moving from hardwired synths to modular synths. So how was that transition for you? Because you, for those that don't know, Puscha is basically, he performs only pretty much now with your modular synth, correct?
Yeah, sometimes some tape loops, but that's about it.
Yeah. So how was that transition for you?
It was a good transition. I was aware of modular when I first started getting into synths, but it was something that I couldn't afford at the time. My first synth, though, was actually a Dope for Dark Energy, this little modular synth.
Yeah, I know that one.
And it was something that I always kind of wanted to get into. I was really interested in sequencing and things, but didn't really have, the money for it. But eventually, when my nana passed away, I was left with a small inheritance. And like any wise person does, I blew it all on synthesizers. But I think the only regret I had from that was not getting into it sooner. It was kind of everything that I always wanted to get out of synths, because I was a terrible keyboard player. And having the ways that a modular synthesizer interacts with itself is really interesting to me. And so I very quickly got more and more into modular and sold off a lot of those keyboards so that I could do more of it.
So it would have been about 8 years ago? let's say.
Yeah, 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah, because we met around that time, I think.
Yeah,
2016, when we both got into the modular synths.
Yeah.
It was really starting to emerge as a format.
Yeah. I think that's when it was really starting to explode, was around them. So it was probably a good time to get into it.
It was a good time to get into it.
Yeah, when things were still, pretty accessible and affordable, and
the Australian dollar wasn't doing too badly, so they were a bit cheaper back then as well. Because of that, funnily enough. Yeah. I mean, we could go further back, and the Aussie dollar was parity with the US, but I missed that whole thing. So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I think on a personal level as well. Going through some big transitions in my life. Before I got into modular, I was still doing filmmaking stuff, and that's kind of related to why I was doing film soundtracks.
Were you studying film?
Yeah, I did a Masters of Film Producing at UCA.
Yeah.
The year before I got into modular was the last year of that. And one of the last big film things that I did was I went to Antarctica and did a Sea Shepherd campaign.
I remember that, I was blown away.
And so that was something that, it was an incredible experience. I think that definitely changed me in some ways, living on a ship in Antarctica for so long.
An amazing experience.
Yeah, and being able to, work as a filmmaker doing that whole thing.
But you did the soundtrack as well, didn't you?
Not really. I was working on the TV show Whale Wars.
Oh, okay.
Which that season never came to air because the campaign didn't have enough stuff happen.
Oh.
I had a lot of ideas about what I wanted to do musically. That because I'd then finished my studies, I feel like all these different ideas were kind of coming to a T, and also my nana passed away just before going then, so I knew that I was going to have some money to be able to do what I want with. And my first thought was always wanting to explore some musical things that I'd never had the means to before. And then that year after coming back from Antarctica, I had months of adrenal fatigue from being on that campaign, not being able to get enough sleep, and
really?
I was in this kind of funny in-between stage of finishing my studies but feeling really burnt out, not really sure where I wanted to go, but still doing some soundtracks for student films here and there, and being able to get into modular at the same time. So for Big Me, it did kind of feel like a big transformative experience to go through all these different changes and then come out the other side and being able to put all of that creative energy into something like a totally new instrument and way of making music that really kind of connected to all these things I want to do for a long time, like connecting back to working within loops that I was doing with guitar stuff, but doing it in more of what felt like a more developed and grown-up kind of way.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So, that's interesting, that just that journey. That one journey away, and how it completely, well, not only having that rewiring of your brain in regards to how you were going to compose your music, but you were also going through a transition mentally and I suppose in that way spiritually as well.
Yeah, I think very much so. Yeah, there was something about living out at sea and seeing the continent of Antarctica that I think really did do something to me.
It brings. I mean, there's always an element of change when we move from, especially when we move out of home and we move to, especially if you're going to move somewhere like a country to the city. But then, it's when you move away and you feel vulnerable. I think it's the vulnerability that brings us down to that core humanity a lot of the time. It's not the same, but similar thing when I moved to London, that it's okay, you've got to start, and it's that whole concept of year zero, right? Where you go from being secure to having nothing and having to completely rely on yourself and be vulnerable and survive.
Yeah.
Right. And know that, okay, you're just a small part of a bigger machine. And so now you're going to have to work through that, and it's coming through that other side, and when you come through that other side, I think you discover more of you.
Yeah.
Or am I hitting it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. The experiences that we go through and the kind of reinvention of yourself that you can do through creative outlets.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely something that is a amazing way of getting to know yourself more and being able to process all these different experiences as well.
Yeah. So speaking of progressions, you're now working at the world-famous Mess. For those who don't know, that's the Melbourne Electronic Sound Studio. So has influenced... How long have you been working there?
A couple of years now.
A couple of years. So has working there influenced you in any way? Question one. And is the gas so much worse now or so much less?
Yeah, I think it's definitely influenced me. It's been really nice to just feel like I'm part of that community for one.
Yeah.
Especially now that I'm a dad. I don't have much time to go to gigs and connect to the community or have much of a social outlet. So by being able to go to Mess every week and talk about synthesizers to
every
people.
Day for a job. Wow.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
A lot of people would be jealous, I'll tell you.
Well, it's a casual job, so it's not every day.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I usually work there at least a couple of shifts a week.
Yeah, okay.
And yeah, so it's really been nice to be able to connect to that.
That gives you that connection.
And to myself as well.
Yeah.
I think it's really, gotten me through the last year and a half, or I'd be going through some kind of identity crisis now, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's a good thing to be able to continue your creative outlet, even though you're having that another life-changing experience like having a child, right?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, Vesa mentioned something very similar, yeah.
Yeah, and it's really nice to be able to play all the synthesizers there as well as part of that, which, they encourage the staff to do, because if we know the synths, then we can show other people how to do it and know to do all the troubleshooting and all that stuff as well.
Yes. Know the quirks of each and every synth.
And like learning something else that's a bit related, kind of, they feed back on each other. So I think, learning a whole bunch of different synths that I've been able to play in there, has definitely come back on my own processes in some way for some of those more technical kinds of ideas.
Yeah, well, every synth is hardwired a little differently, isn't it? Like,
They've all got different character. Yeah, there's always some quirk in there somewhere along the way.
Yeah, well, they needed a point of difference, a lot of the old synths, to have it marketable, right? It wasn't
and the new ones too.
Yeah, well, yeah, all the new ones. We won't get into the new ones. But how has the gas gone since? Well, I suppose the child just eliminates the gas, I suppose, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, I think I'm very much in this modular headspace. So, I'm extremely particular about the things that I want in my systems as well.
Yeah.
So...
and it's focused.
Yeah. I think it's in some ways it's been good because... there are some things that I've been interested in, and we actually have it at Mess. So I've been able to try it and see if it's what I want or not.
Yeah,
because in the modular world, you might read something and think on paper that it's going to work for you, but you really don't know until you play it. And so can be a really long process of buying and selling to refine what you want, just to try stuff out. So that's been nice to be able to do with some things like.
Yeah.
There's so much out there, and what we've got at Mess is only a tiny, tiny part of that, really. But even so, it's been kind of nice to trial out some of these ideas and some of these specific things.
Oh, it's a massive advantage, especially now. So, I mean, you can, if you're listening, and if you're thinking you would like to do the same thing, you can actually go to Mess. You don't have to be a member. It costs a little bit more to have a session there, but you can go to Mess and try these things out yourself, right? It's not closed, it's open to the public.
Yeah, it's the whole idea is to originally it was so that these kind of museum level synthesizers, instead of just sitting in a wealthy person's collection, people in the community could come and play the the 70s Surge Paperface synthesizer, just the stuff that would be mind-blowing to people who are into synthesizers to be able to come and touch and play those things. But also a part of MES is trying to get people who might be new to synthesizers to be able to come and have a go and offering workshops and things like that.
So try before you buy as well. In a way.
Come in and play specific synthesizers that they're thinking about buying.
Yeah, even better. Yeah. So your gas is eased off. That's good. It's good to know.
It's kind of helpful. I think if anyone who has a lot of gas, MES is a good kind of antidote to that. You can have a membership and try all these new things. We've got hundreds of synths there. So people can come in and, scratch that itch of playing around with a new thing without having to pay more than their membership fees.
You mentioned the current music trends, and you mentioned its reflection on the current state of the world. Do you remember what you said to me at all?
A little bit. I was probably just ranting anyway.
You said something about how music in these times, in these hard times in the world, is more dissonant and ambient due to the nihilistic nature of the world that we currently live in, which I thought was quite deep. Yeah. And I liked it. It resonated with me, really.
Yeah. Well, obviously, it doesn't quite pertain to the pop world.
No.
Idiom.
Yeah.
But,
those who think deeper.
Yeah.
Those who
are
delve into the mind.
Sounds and different experiences. Particularly within art music worlds. And a lot of this stuff kind of started in the 80s when people started really kind of feeling where capitalism was taking us, really.
Yes.
And not really feeling like a sense of the progress of
community,
civilization, and loss of community and this sense of belonging and purpose. You can hear it in a lot of the post-punk music from that period and cold wave stuff and so on. And I think, currently a lot of experimental music is kind of embodying that more than we have seen for quite a while. I think that a lot of art music tends to be less melodic and harmonic and more focused on a lot of these kinds of, more dissonant and sometimes harsher kinds of sounds. And
I think it's reflected not only in the soundscapes and ambient, and I think it's a similar reflection in probably even band music, but also beat-driven electronic music as well. I think it's a reflection right across the board. But the funny thing is that this style of music also brings people together. So that's the...
it kind of helps create community. Whether online or in person. And, I think ambient music is a little bit in opposition to the more nihilistic stuff. I think a lot of ambient music is, kind of becoming more of a comfort. And there's this interesting thing in a lot of ambient music. There's this kind of like ambient tension where it kind of sounds dissonant, but just like sits on that kind of tension throughout a whole piece. And there's something that's super cathartic about that I think people get really drawn to.
I mean, ambient music is really, and I don't think it's only a reflection of the modular world. I think it's also a reflection of the world itself. Now, we're running out of time. Last question that I always ask everyone. So if there was one piece of advice that you would give to someone wanting to head down the live hardware realm, what would that one piece of advice be?
That's a good question. I think just give it a go and try not to force it to be anything. I think when people get into music, they have an idea of what kind of style or genre.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be so gung-ho about what that is. And be open to where it takes you. And if anything, listen widely and expose yourself to more different things, because in the end, you'll be coming out with stuff that's more satisfying and is more kind of an authentic way of expressing yourself, rather than trying to make what you're doing be something that exists already. Follow what sounds good and what sounds interesting. And, something in hardware in particular, we're humans. We like touching things. We like tactility. Try and find instruments that work for you, that whatever way you like to work. Like for me, modular works because I like the interaction between the components. Plus,
agreed.
I don't have to play keyboards and worry about that sort of thing.
Me too.
Yeah, but I don't know if someone wants to get into hardware and they're interested in learning keyboard or can already, then maybe that's a really good pathway for them. But really, I think, following what sounds good, what feels good, and letting that lead the way that you go, rather than I want to be making music like that person. Like that could be an element, of course.
Yeah, you can start there. I think it's a great place to start. But then, when you go away from that, don't be afraid to continue that journey, right? And go where your heart and ears take you.
It'll always be much more interesting for yourself and for everyone else.
So
it
finally,
sounds good to you, it sounds good to someone else.
Yeah, well, someone. Even though we won't get it back into people listening to your music. Maybe another time. Do you have any shout outs to anybody at all before we
I feel a bit put on the spot, but always shout outs to Mess and my colleagues and my family. And just the amazing community we have here in Melbourne, and all the online community that extends beyond as well. Community and family, pretty much.
Yeah, beautiful. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, and we'll get into your set. I might. We'll get into the set. We'll just jam. We missed out on talking about what's in your case, but that's okay. Maybe we'll do a separate video for that. And we'll do that separately and put it up on YouTube or something.
So that anyone who's not interested doesn't have to bother.
That's right. We don't bore them over the radio with talking about hardware. So thank you very much, and we'll get into the jam.
Sounds good.
Cheers.